Publish, Position, Profit, Episode 1.
Helping experts and entrepreneurs share their message with the world so that they can build a successful business doing something they love, live life on their terms, and inspire others. Welcome to Publish, Position, Profit with your host, John Ty.
Hey, this is John Ty, and welcome to Publish, Position, Profit. I'm very, very excited today to have a super special guest. His name is Mike Koenigs, and I first came across Mike back in 2009 when I was very first starting out in business. He spoke at a Tony Robbins event, and he was awesome. I'm not going to give anything away, but immediately I got onto Mike's mailing list, and that's something I'll recommend to you as well. Definitely do that, and I will put links in the show notes. So I've been following Mike since 2009. He's got an amazing record of things he's done. I'm just going to give you some highlights here, and then I'm going to hand over to Mike. So Mike is a 6-time #1 best-selling author. He was 2009 Marketer of the Year winner. He's a serial entrepreneur, filmmaker, speaker, and patented inventor. And he's the CEO and chief disruptosaurus and founder of Instant Customer and creator of Author Expert Marketing Machines. Those are a couple of Mike's products that I have. Also, he's created Make, Market, Launch It and the Top Gun Consulting Toolkit. His products and services have simplified and automated marketing for over 30,000 small businesses, authors, experts, speakers, coaches, and consultants in more than 60 countries. So he's a perfect guest for this show. Now, Mike has a vision, and that is to create 1 million entrepreneurs in his lifetime in both the developed and developing world, which is amazing. He's an active philanthropist, and he's raised over $2.1 million for the Just Like My Child Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that provides education, microfinance, microcredit, girls' education, and legal rights in Uganda and Senegal. Here's a couple of quick highlights for you before I hand over to Mike. His companies have produced 11 consecutive multi-million-dollar product launches, with the largest grossing over $9.1 million in a week. And in one single direct-to-camera webcast, Mike produced over $3.1 million in sales in one day. His celebrity and best-selling author clients include Paula Abdul, Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis, Debbie Ford, John Asraf from The Secret, Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street, Richard Dreyfuss, Brian Tracy, Jorge Cruz, Dan Kennedy, and Harvey McKay. And I could go on, but I'm not. I'm going to hand it over to Mike. So first of all, Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
It is my pleasure. It is so nice to be here, John. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate that. It's great,
Absolutely.
Great to have you here. And I first got to speak to Mike a couple of months ago at one of Mike's events, where Mike does a number of live events each year, as well as getting onto his list. Definitely recommend you check out his live events. So, Mike, let's get started with the show. First question, are you ready to publish, position, and profit?
Of course I am. I've been doing it, as a matter of fact. So
I know you have.
Yeah.
I know. You're the perfect guest. So, okay, so we always start the show out with what I call a getting to know you round. So I've given everybody an overview of what you do, but amazing as that overview was, it still doesn't do justice to what you've achieved and what you're still achieving. So let me hand it over to you. Tell us about what you're doing now. Maybe tell us a little bit of the story about your background and how you got started in that.
Sure. I'll give you the big one, which is about 18 months ago, as of the time we're recording this right now, I was laying in the fetal position at the Duke Medical Chemotherapy and Radiation Ward. I had stage 3A colorectal cancer. I was surrounded by people who were dying. I was fighting for my life, and I became obsessed with the idea of writing a book. And I wanted to leave something behind as a legacy in case I passed and I left my wife and my 11-year-old son behind. So with only an hour of strength a day and with only my iPhone, I wrote, published, and promoted my first book to become a #1 bestseller in only 30 days. And 18 months later, I've helped almost 300 people write, publish, promote, and become top 10 best-selling authors, including Abby Richter, who's a 9-year-old girl who used the same system to write 4 best-selling books in only 3 months about rescue pets. And since then, I beat cancer. I went on to write 5 more #1 bestsellers. So, I live in San Diego, and what I have been doing is helping people promote, market, and launch themselves online, either with products, starting their own shows, writing their own books. And here's a couple interesting stats I can give you, which are right now, according to the New York Times, there's a survey that was reported, and I can't quote it for England, but I can record it, that 81% of all Americans feel they have a book in them and that they should write it. And
I think it's pretty much the same here.
I think so too. I'd say it's probably a worldwide aspiration. Now, here's another one though. According to Forbes magazine, between 600,000 and 1 million books are published every single year in the United States alone, but most authors sell fewer than 250 copies of their books, but some of them go on to sell millions. So I have some strategies that I can share, and if we were on video right now, I'd be able to hold up my books and I'd be able to show you some of the books that my own authors have written, which is, the biggest and most important thing. I'll actually kind of give you a couple nuggets that might answer some of your questions, but most people end up having what I call 3 huge mistakes that they have in their mind. It's really brain poisoning. But the first mistake is something we call the Ernest Hemingway excuse, and that's thinking you have to be a writer in order to be an author. Or if you want to create your own online radio or TV show like you're doing, really, that's not a big challenge. The second mistake is something we call the Albert Einstein assumption, and that's thinking you have to be an expert or even smart to write a book or create a podcast or a product. And the fact of the matter is, I barely passed high school. I slid through with a D average, and I never went on to go to any other continuing education. So I'm pretty good example of that. And the third mistake is what we call Warren Buffett BS, and that's thinking you have to be rich or famous in order to be successful. And I grew up in a lower middle class home. My dad's a barber, and at 76, he still cuts hair to this day. So there were no extras in our house. I started working full time when I was 16 years old. And so, I'm kind of an example. Some people say, well, I can't relate to Mike because he's been around, he's made money and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, every single day I still battle with poor boy psychology and the illusion of the shame that I grew up in, where I just ignored the fact that I came from 2 great people who love me. My parents are together to this day, and after 50 years, they still live in the same home that I was raised in, and they couldn't give a rat's you-know-what about my fame and my success. And the first time I ever made $1 million, I remember distinctly, I called up my mom, and I was crying, and I held up the phone. I said, Mom, you remember how every day I talked about making $1 million someday, because all I want to do is just get rich and get the hell out of Eagle Lake, Minnesota, where I grew up in. And she says, yeah, I remember that. And I said, well, Mom, I just made $1 million in a week. And I said, well, actually a week in 20 years. And she laughed and laughed and laughed. And she thought that was pretty cool. But 4 months later, I did, what became my biggest product launch that produced a lot of money. I'll get to the punchline in a second. But I remember I called her up again. I said, Mom, you remember how I called you 4 months ago? And I told you that I'd made $1 million in a week. And she says, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, Mom, and I'd just gotten a text message from my COO, and I said, I just made $1 million in 43 minutes. And she laughed and she said, that's great, honey. She says, that's so great. Your dad's out in the driveway right now. He's actually out in the garden, and the kids are coming over, the grandkids are coming over for lunch today. And she started talking about what was going on in Eagle Lake, Minnesota. She just couldn't care. And then she said, well, let me get your dad on the phone. So my dad got on the phone. I told him the news. And he says, that's great, son. I'm really proud of you. And while we were on the line, it was like 1 hour and 14 minutes. I remember distinctly calculating the time, and we had just hit $2 million in sales. And I told them that, and they laughed and continued to talk about what they were going to be doing when the grandkids came over, what they're going to be making. My dad says, I've just made this great pot roast, and I wish you were here right now. And but that's just the fact of the matter is anyone can do this. Anyone can get started. And as long as you understand 4 big ideas, you can make it and be successful and become a top 10 best-selling author on any topic anywhere in the world. You can start your own show. You can launch products, but you just got to be able to perform your material, tell stories, answer questions, or interview an expert. Like I said, I wrote my first book by talking into my iPhone while I had cancer. The second is being able to publish everywhere, to be seen, heard, found, and read anytime, anywhere. The third is, and for that, you've got Amazon at your disposal. You have Apple at your disposal now, distributing your podcasts and making you famous. You got Google that's willing to promote you to 2 billion people. The third is to promote to the important social sites for free. And most people don't know this, but 73% of the human race twice as engaged with social media every month. And the fourth is to turn that exposure into profit, helping you make some money somehow with either sponsors and advertisers or selling or promoting your products or someone else's products. So anyway, I did way too much material there. I answered too much. I probably packed in and I answered 30 of your questions. But anyway, I get excited when I do these. So go ahead anyway.
Well, that definitely comes across. But I appreciate you being so generous and frank with your answer, because that's important. Because and I was there. I was, 5 years ago, I was just starting out. We see as entrepreneurs or people who are thinking of making that transition into the world of entrepreneurship, we see the people like you when you're the finished article. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing that backstory with us, and say, you and also, that conversation you had with your parents, that just reminds everybody what's important in life. It's great to have the money and the freedom and stuff like that, but ultimately health and friends and family, those are the things that truly, truly matter. So that's a good lesson in and of itself.
Right.
So thank you for that. And definitely, you gave us those 4 points there, and I really want to dive into those in some more detail, because you are the go-to guy in this area. So before we just go into that publishing side, let's just take a little tangent and just tell us, you're obviously very, very passionate. That comes through, this is an audio podcast, but we're on video right now. It's coming through in your voice. It's coming through in your face. Tell us what makes you so passionate about this.
Well, I got the big kicker now, which is I almost died. So, I look at every day now, and I just I went through a course this last weekend about media training. I had an opportunity to speak and pitch local and national television, what are known as segment producers. And in the training that was done, there were 3 big ideas, and these aren't things that I haven't known before, but they really hit home in a different way just because of the struggles I've gone through and the health crisis I went through, and the fact that there was a good, strong period of time where both I thought I was going to die, and then the other thing is at times, my body was in so much pain that I know what it's like for someone to make a decision to die, to leave their body, because you just would be like, it's just not worth this excruciating pain, no matter how much I love life and the people around me. And I remember there were 4 distinct times when I could have made that decision. I know what it's like for someone to exhale and expire their final time. But as you had mentioned, I established a goal. Part of it's because I know what it's like to come from nothing, and I know what it's like to be a nobody, and I know what it's like to feel not special, even though that's a big, dumb, grand illusion, because that's a decision and a choice you get to make every single day. But several years ago, my wife and I had we had 2 miscarriages after we had our son, Zach, who's 11 years old as of the time we're recording this. And she woke up in the middle of the night, and at that time, there's a lot of activity going on and what was going on in Africa, Uganda specifically. And my wife got up in the middle of the night. She said, I don't know why, but I have to go to Africa. And this is like at 3 a.m. She woke me up to tell me this. And I'm like, okay, honey. And a little backstory on my wife is, her parents are Holocaust survivors. She grew up in New York City. Her parents came over with absolutely nothing, escaping. Literally, Nazis were marching into Yugoslavia. They narrowly escaped with their lives by jumping into a boat and rowing over to Bari, Italy. And so she's got that collective consciousness pain thing going on. And her attitude at the time was, there is a Holocaust going on over in Africa right now, and I will not stand and watch this happen to a race of human beings. And so she ended up going to Africa. She ended up bumping into a Catholic nun. Her name is Sister Ernestine. And they were delivering babies by kerosene lamp in a shed. And that night, my wife witnessed a young mother dying as her baby passed through her. And she heard these horrible screams all night long. It turned out it was that woman's mother watching her daughter die as she gave birth, knowing that baby girl that came out was most likely going to be disposed of, because that's what happens to baby girls who have no mother, because over there the orphan problem is huge. 33% or so, anywhere between 27 and 33% of the population in a lot of these villages have HIV/AIDS, and they're dying. So that basically set her in motion. She turned to Sister Ernestine. She said, what can I do that will make a big difference, aside from the fact that the nuns were feeding this little baby glucose water because they couldn't even afford formula? And so she fed the baby for a day. It's kind of like the Jesus story. But then she said, what can make the biggest difference? Sister Ernestine said, we need electricity. If we had electricity, we at least could have lights. We'd be delivering women by light in the middle of the night, and fewer of them would die, but we'd also be able to refrigerate medicine here. We'd be qualified as a clinic. We'd get some support from the Ugandan government, and we could start getting some equipment in here. So my wife came home with a little video she shot on a cheap video camera, made a video, and started talking to friends and family and putting that video online. And within 90 days, she raised $30,000, delivered a generator to Sister Ernestine, and that started her foundation, which is called the Just Like My Child Foundation. I started getting behind it. I told and shared her story to my audience, to my customers, and we started raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of our live events, we raised $250,000 by doing a matching donation thing. And so since then, I've raised over $2 million for that foundation. She's raised much more, and she's found her way into Hollywood now, where she's getting some great support. But the point of the story is this. What I'm passionate about is helping people share their message, get seen, heard, found, anywhere, anytime, and transforming lives. And at the end of the day, the human being is a storytelling creature. Our brains respond to stories, and really, that's what we do. It's where language came from. It's how we grow. It's how we connect. It's how we build. It's how we're intimate. It's and feeling heard and feeling as though we matter is the never-ending quest and the battle that we all have. And all of us have it, no matter what our socioeconomic background is or whatever the case may be. So in doing so, I gave you a long backstory there, but the bottom line is I really got connected with that, my own story, and recognizing and seeing it in the, I've helped over 35,000 people communicate and share and start their own businesses, write books, start podcasts or whatever in my career now. And when I see the incredible transformation that occurs when someone is able to communicate with authenticity and passion and feel as though they have made a transformational difference in someone else's life, everything changes, and their need and desire to give back and create more transformations and to inspire and motivate other people and help them achieve a new level of transcendence in some way, shape, or form in their life so they can contribute on a higher level increases dramatically. And those who have been healed and those who have been transformed oftentimes choose to help other people transcend whatever their condition is, whatever the illusion that they live inside in their mind. Because the fact of the matter is there is plenty to go around. There is infinite wealth amongst us right now. And there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to not become incredibly wealthy and to be able to share that wealth with other people and help pull them out of whatever hole they might happen to be in, whether it's real or illusory, and achieve greatness.
Yeah. Amen. Absolutely. And amazing what you and your wife are doing with the Just Like My Child Foundation. We'll make sure we get a link to that up as well. And also, with transforming, and it's a theme that I hear a lot now because I'm talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and experts, and as they become successful, they want to pay it forward. They want to help other people transform and have some of what they got, which is great. It's a testimony to what's positive in the human spirit, not what we see on the news every day. So thank you for that. And I should actually add in at this point that Mike is the inspiration for me starting this podcast. It was reading about it in Mike's book, Multicast Marketing, that Mike published with Paul Koenigs, that made me think, this is something I should be doing. So thank you for that, Mike.
Wow, thank you, and you're welcome. But I'll tell you what, you just made my day. That's the greatest gift I can ever get, is that someone was inspired and took action and implemented and is now out sharing and spreading the opportunity and messages, other people's messages, and making the world a better place. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I mean, this podcast, this is all about really a couple of things. One is helping people make that transition and to successful entrepreneurship and to sort of fast track and learn from the successes and the mistakes that I've made, that the different guests have made. And also through that, it's about, and this is obviously one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, is it's called Publish, Position, Profit for a reason. And that is that publishing, getting your message out to your target audience, and using that as a positioning tool to set yourself up as an authority figure, as an expert, and be able to communicate things that matter to people. If you get those things right, the profits are going to flow from that. So rather than, instead of focusing on the profits, focusing on adding value to people, changing people's lives, getting your message out there. So that's a nice little segue, because what I would like to jump into now is, you have the book Multicast Marketing. You're an expert in multicast marketing. I know what that is, but probably a lot of the people listening don't know, or if they've got an idea, they perhaps, because the statistics, I know you've got some amazing statistics. What's happening in the world right now, and the opportunities we have to get our message out are unbelievable. So what I'm going to do, I'm not saying more, I'll just hand it over to you. Maybe you could tell us what multicast marketing is, and how, obviously yourself, but also I know you work with a lot of clients, and how that's transforming your business, their businesses, and so on. So let me stop talking.
All right.
Over to you, Mike.
Okay. Well, here's what I will tell you is, since writing Multicast Marketing, I wrote another book that's even more updated and even more complete, because this idea of multicasting has evolved into something that I call You Everywhere Now. That's the title of my latest book. Mm-hmm. And if you want, we can make sure everyone who listens to this can get a copy of it for free. But
thank you.
But here's the basic notion: is that we live in an opportunity. I mentioned this in the beginning, that 73% of the human race is connected and interacts with social media every single month. So again, going back to Africa, when I went there my first time, we went into the deep bush, and there would be like a chief who would have an old school Nokia phone that he'd send someone on a bicycle, or they'd walk 10 kilometers away to charge it every 3 days or so with a group solar panel, like a collective community solar panel, and they'd all sit around and plug it in. and to them, a mobile phone is life and death. But these little phones had like a 2-line, probably 32 character LCD display on it, just this little dinky black and white thingy. But
I remember those.
Yeah, so someone at least could call for help if someone were dying, which happened all the time there. And in that same village, I was shooting video, and in one of the videos that we put together for fundraising was a woman literally dying of AIDS in a mud hut. I mean, it's like, how could that possibly still happen? But it happens, right? Mm-hmm. So 5 years later, when I was there, I remember, actually it was 4 years, I remember that distinctly now, I had kids walking up to me with smartphones, and they wanted to connect with me on Facebook, okay? So that just goes to show the rapid growth. So here are some of the stats that are fairly impressive. Right now, about 220 million internet-connected TVs exist, and that number is expected to be about 300 million by the end of this year. So we'll start there. And there's about 1.5 billion normal TVs that are connected, broadcast-style televisions or cable-connected TVs worldwide. That number is going to exceed cable and broadcast very, very quickly. It's well on its way. But then, right now, there's roughly 2 billion internet-connected tablets. We're talking like iPads and Android devices, or Microsoft Surface devices, or Kindles in use worldwide. Then you got about 3 billion internet-connected desktop and laptop computers. So that's 3 billion of those. But then you've got roughly 3 billion or so mobile phones, and those are smartphones at this point. Mm-hmm. So there's actually about 7 billion mobile phone accounts in use worldwide, but that number is expected to be 15 billion internet-connected mobile accounts worldwide by 2015, which is more than double the population of the planet.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Okay, but when I ask people right now, and I'll ask you this, John, I'll say, okay, if you look around just personally, how many internet-connected devices do you own between phones, tablets, computers, internet, an Apple TV or a Fire TV or a Roku device or any of those? How many of those devices do you have right now?
I think I have 4 right now.
Mm-hmm.
A laptop, a PC, a tablet, and a smartphone.
Right. And that's pretty typical. And I'll tell you what, when I'd speak 5 years ago in an audience, I'd say, how many of you have other than your desktop or laptop computer, even have a mobile phone? And it would be like maybe half the audience. And then, 3 years ago, how many of you have a smartphone? that? 20%, 25. Now I say, how many of you have a smartphone, Android, and iPhone? It's practically 100% of the audience, and the ones that don't raise their hands are deeply ashamed, and they just haven't had a reason, But and I tell them, I say, look, you have a production studio in your pocket. The video quality of an iPhone or an Android phone right now is just shy of a DSLR camera that you can, there are people producing movies on iPhones that are 3 or 4 generations old. So the bottom line is, it is an inexcusable, I won't call it a sin, but it's inexcusable that you're not constantly creating content and sharing it with the connected planet every single day, all the time, in my opinion, because the means of doing so, to be able to shoot and edit and press a button and publish it. And then here's where the numbers get even more interesting. So, right now, between Google and YouTube, which of course Google owns, they engage with about 2 billion people every single month. All right. And you and I right now could be doing a show broadcasting that content to 1 or 10 million people in real time, interactively, for free. Okay, so if you compare that to even a decade or two ago, the resources required to broadcast content to an audience would be hundreds of millions of dollars, and the equipment and the personnel required to do it, it would take an army to do that, and that's why you needed to get permission from segment producers or distributors, or go get a book deal to get your message, your book, sent, or whatever it would be. I mean, it's just like, holy cow, right? And so you can do that with, you can literally take your iPhone, press a button, and be broadcasting to a couple million people for free. I mean, if you had, you could get a $75 tablet off of eBay right now, and you could be a homeless person and connect to a free Wi-Fi connection at McDonald's and start an online TV show and broadcast to a couple million people. All right. So let's just put that in box number one. That's the Google world. Now you got Apple, that at this moment has about 1.8 billion connected accounts and 800 million credit cards on file. So that's impressive enough. So you and I, just like you're doing right now, you've got your podcast. You can create a podcast for free. You can submit it for free. Apple will promote you and give you a free website and share your message. And every time you publish an episode, you literally click a button and bam, that thing within 10 minutes notifies anyone who's subscribed to your podcast and delivers that audio or that video content so it can be seen, heard, viewed anytime, anywhere, including cars. And I left that out. Just in the United States, 96 million Americans, a third of the population here, drives 26 miles back and forth to work every day. And 20% of them are listening to streaming audio. And what I like to say to people who are interested in broadcasting their messages, do you know what those people are listening to? You know what the answer is? Guess first, and then I'll tell you.
I'm going to guess the streaming audio. They're listening to podcasts. Yeah,
most of it is. It's streaming audio or podcasts. But what I like to say to most people who aren't publishing, I say, not you. That's what they're listening to. Okay? So then you could literally take that same content. So like right now, this thing that we're doing, in fact, we could do it as an exercise. Now, again, we could be broadcasting this live as our own online TV show using Google or YouTube's help. In this case, we're doing an iTunes podcast, which also can be redistributed in many other places of podcast. There's Stitcher is one of them, and SoundCloud, and there's others. But we can transcribe this into a book and publish it on Amazon. And right now, Amazon's got roughly 300 million registered credit cards on file. They are responsible for selling at any given time about half of all books sold on the planet today. They're radically and rapidly disrupting the entire publishing market, and now they're going after the telephone market. They're going after they're creating original content. So
they're getting into TV and video.
Totally. Okay. Yeah. So between Apple and Amazon, they're going to decimate the cable industry within the next 3 years. Is my belief. And broadcast is just about dead anyway. The only reason they're still alive is because there's old contracts and stuff like that. I mean, as soon as some of these things dry up and most entertainers and talent realize they don't need them anymore, they can build their own platform and own the relationships with their customers and keep all the money, and they don't need the overhead, the hassles, or the bureaucracy breathing down their back. Those are the things that are happening. Publishers are terrified as well. And in some cases, I'm not anti-publisher. It's just that in a lot of cases, they don't serve a purpose anymore. They don't add value. But the point being, we can take our content, we can transcribe it, we can format it, slap on a cover, and bam, we can be published, and Amazon will have our book online and give us a free web page that gets great search engine visibility for free. They'll give us 70% of the money, and that in 4 hours. And they'll have a paperback version of that book available in less than 24 hours that they'll print on demand. And again, pay you most of the money. So the whole idea behind this you everywhere now philosophy is you in the pockets, on the screens, and being seen, heard, found anywhere, anytime, any device with the click of a button. And so that's the big idea from a publishing point of view, but then you can social cast that content out using all the free social media networks like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest and Instagram, not MySpace, and again, be broadcast and promoted for free. And then you can go to the next level and capture those leads, so on our interview here, we can say, hey, you can text your email address to this phone number. You can visit my mobile responsive website and get a copy of my book for free or whatever you want to do to build that connected audience. We call that mobile casting. So the summary here and the idea behind it originally started with multicast marketing machines, but it evolved into that last book, You Everywhere Now, which is, first of all, create your content and basically tell stories, perform it live on Google, YouTube, Google Hangouts or whatever, and be seen and potentially broadcast to literally millions, if not billions of people. Then take the same content, turn it into a podcast, and share that using Apple's infrastructure and SoundCloud and Stitcher and iHeartRadio and all the other networks. Yeah. That's for free. Building your base, gaining access to a couple billion additional people, then transcribe that content, turn it into a book, and sell it. But it's also, some people prefer to read, and the value of a book is considerably higher than any other medium as of right now. And of course, with the Kindle that Amazon's produced, right now, Amazon sells 1.4 to 2 books, Kindle books, for every physical book it sells. So they won there as well. And then again, broadcast it, make sure it's seen through the social networks, which are free. And then finally, engage and capture leads and build your base, build your platform, the whole idea of who knows you and what you're known for. And again, every single celebrity, every well-known person, has to start somewhere. And it's easy to get frustrated and look at what everyone else is doing and think they're so much further ahead of you. But you know what? They all started from square zero, and now they've achieved their level of success because they're broadcasting and creating content on a regular, disciplined level, and they're engaging with interesting people.
Yeah, like I'm engaging with you, in all seriousness.
Right on.
And and I want to pull a couple of points out there because there is a tendency, you're absolutely right, I think, to think, oh, well, they're already famous, or I don't know where to start. But it's amazing. And again, I keep coming across these stories of entrepreneurs who maybe a couple of years ago or a few months ago or 5 years ago, not that long ago, they were just beginning. They knew very little, but they started. They took action. So that's absolutely key. Take action, do something. Second thing is this whole you everywhere now phenomenon, the multicast marketing and the you everywhere now idea. This is just beginning. I think we're at the beginning of a huge wave, which is I find that very, very exciting. We live, I think, in an amazing, amazing time. We're very, very lucky, very privileged. And so to start, and a really key point I want to pick up on that you just made, Mike, is the idea of live casting. So obviously this episode we're recording now is not going out live, but it could do. Okay, we could be putting this out as audio or video live, but it's being created live, and that is an incredibly good and efficient way of creating great content. And I've written a number of books, and I've done it originally like the old school way, where I've sat down and, with pen and paper or at my laptop and typed away. And, I'm proud of what I've done, but it's very time consuming. Whereas this, what I've realized particularly since I started podcasting, and this is what the point I want to make here is until you start doing it, that's something Tony Robbins says, until you start doing it, you don't really know it. So I knew it because I'd heard you say it and I'd heard other people say it, but until I started doing the podcasting, I hadn't fully appreciated what an amazing content creation strategy it is. Because I'll come away from a 30-minute or an hour-long interview and I'll be like, wow, that was amazing. Like, this is an amazing interview. And it's evergreen as well. So people can be benefiting from this interview tomorrow, they could, or in a month's time, or in a year's time, and they can be following those links back to, to get onto your list and all of those things. So I just wanted to pull those little points out there because we live in an amazing time. We have some amazing, these companies have built, these billion-dollar companies have built this infrastructure, and they need content. Ultimately, Amazon wants Kindle books to sell. Apple wants podcasts. And it's not just enough to take the podcast from the main broadcasters and so on. So they're lending us their platforms. We can leverage these platforms to, and I know that's one of the things you teach, but we can leverage these incredibly powerful platforms with hundreds of millions of paying customers to build ourselves up. And if you haven't started on your journey, whatever that journey may be, once you get going, you might be amazed just how quickly things start to take off.
Well, on that, what I can tell you, I can give you case study after case study after case study. But I'll give you one example. One of my students, one of my clients, is a guy named John Cody. And he wrote a book. Let's see, I have it right here. It's too bad I can't show it to you. I'll hold it up to the camera because you can see me. It's called Mobilize Your Customers. And he basically kind of retaught some of the content he learned in our community about mobile marketing and being seen, heard, and found. But the subtitle is Create Powerful Word of Mouth Advertising Using Social Media, Video, and Mobile Marketing to Attract New Customers and Skyrocket Your Profits. So here's what happened. We have a really simple system for doing something we call bookcasting. So again, the idea is you live cast, you podcast, you bookcast, and then you social cast and mobile cast. So he used the strategy, put his book up, ended up getting a call from an event producer saying, hey, John, I'd love to have you speak at an event. It's actually a medical organization meeting where they do, I got to think of the name of what they call this. It's medical travel. The name will pop into my head in a couple of minutes, but I'll actually do a little research here.
It's like the travel tourism kind
travel
of thing.
Tourism. There you go. Medical tourism. That's the
medical
phrase.
Tourism. Yeah.
So anyway, he goes and speaks about this topic, and while he's there, we teach this idea. It's part of the mobile casting strategy of while you're on stage, you can say, hey, if you'd like more information or you want a copy of my book, text your email address right now to 555-1212 or whatever the phone number is. So all these doctors who were in the audience texted their contact information in. He ended up engaging with about 12 of them. And while he was there, he actually told his story about how he wrote this book in less than 30 days. He published it himself and how he's using mobile marketing and video and social media to share his message and build his platform. And of course, some of those doctors said, I could do that too. This sounds awesome. And then he said, well, will you do it with me or for me? And he ended up closing a $12,000 deal while he was there with the first doctor. And since then, he's engaged about 4 more. But here's what happened. He had this big aha experience. And again, I'll have to say it's part of what we teach, which is if you're struggling right now getting in front of your target audience or your target customers, why not interview them and make them an expert? So what he started doing is interviewing doctors about their services doing medical tourism. And then in the meantime, he also interviewed people. I was one of the guests because I did medical tourism. I didn't go out of the country, but I went to Duke Medical, and that's from San Diego, which is in North Carolina, to have some of my cancer treatment done when I had cancer. Well, what happens, though, is he interviews those people, and at the end he says, hey, I've got an idea for how you could grow your business. And of course they say, well, I'd love to talk about that. And he says, because he's already the expert, he pulled them in. They feel great. They feel like they're a superstar and a celebrity. He's able to basically go in and talk to them. So what I've been telling people is, if you want to get the warmest introduction, it's sometimes harder than heck to get a phone call with the CEO of a company, but if you'd say, I'd love to make you a star on my show, can I interview you on my show? who says no to that? Okay,
Yep.
even people who were previously untouchable. So anyway, his show has grown so fast now. He's at over 50,000 downloads. Now he's got advertisers and sponsors chasing him around. And this started out with him being asked to speak in front of an audience on a topic he knew, or at least in a business he didn't even know existed before this. So the notion of anyone can become an expert on any topic by asking questions and interviewing people who are experts, suddenly you're positioned not only horizontally alongside them, but you also start elevating and gaining access to a new pool. Plus, you become a source of fame and potentially fortune to that audience, exposing them to new great potential customers and clients as well. So that's the big idea. But I got another one with Sandy Masori. She's a balloon artist of all things, and she creates balloon trade show exhibits. So when you walk into a trade show and you see an exhibit, normally those things are super expensive. She has a low-cost way of building exhibits made out of colored balloons, and you can walk up and it looks kind of cute. Well, she ended up writing a book called Inflate Your Trade Show Profits with Balloons. And it's like, what the hell, right? But she wrote the book in less than 30 days. Same thing. She ended up getting a call from a segment producer on the Today Show, which is one of the largest television programs in the United States, as a party expert during Christmas and New Year's. They've had her on twice now, and her YouTube channel, the total views for that actually exceeds 1 million views. And she's the balloon lady, but now she's going out and using this platform she's created for herself by exposing herself through books and through other content. And again, the big notion is create content once, distribute it everywhere, any device, anywhere, anytime, to be seen, heard, and found, read in every pocket. And that's how I think. If you can own someone's pocket, you own their minds, you can own their language, you can own what's going through, and you can be their friend every single day. So it's, again, these are big ideas, but I've literally just told the story that I just told you to people who run $100 million a year manufacturing companies, and they'll hire me on the spot for $20,000 to $30,000 per day as a consultant to share with them ideas on how to do this. And, they want to know some of the how-to, but I'll literally just consult on these big ideas. And if you want, I can give you one more awesome story here. So a few months ago, I was on my way to something called South by Southwest, which is one of the greatest events in the United States. It's technology, it's music, it's entertainment, it's movies, and it's all kind of collided together. And I'm on the flight on my way there, and I overhear some people in front of me saying, "Hey, do you see who's in front of us here?" And they're like,
here, Mike. So I was gonna ask you if you had time to share this story with us. I'm really glad you brought this one up.
All right, so here's what happened. So they go, "It's Richard Dreyfuss," and I look over, and sure as heck, it's him. And like growing up, there were a few movies that changed my life. Star Wars was one of them, but then Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that was one of my favorites. And then later on, I think Mr. Holland's Opus is an absolute magnificent gem, but Richard Dreyfuss has produced over 50 movies. He was the youngest Academy Award winner ever. He actually beat Marlon Brando by like 3 or 6 months for that position, that title. And that was from, I'm trying to think, The Goodbye Girl. And I mean, he is remarkable. So anyway, I saw him over there, and thank God for Wi-Fi on a plane, but I started doing a little bit of research, and I've been paying attention to Richard for years because I love his attitude. He's cocky, he's irreverent, he's passionate as hell, and he's funny too. But he also happens to be a huge fan of American history. He left the acting profession to study in Oxford for several years. And then on top of it, he started this great nonprofit called the Dreyfuss Initiative about civics and media responsibility. Two things that I love deeply. Civics meaning the participation in local and community government, and the level of control and power and influence you can actually have as an individual in a government. So, I did a little bit of research. I listened to a podcast interview he was on, and years ago I watched him on the Bill Maher show. He's funny as hell, and again, super irreverent. He's not afraid to tell anyone to go to hell. But anyway, as the plane left, I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Dreyfus, my name is Mike Koenigs. I love what you do at the Dreyfus Initiative, and I'm really good at raising money for nonprofits. That's one of the things I've done for my wife's foundation in Africa. He stopped. He looked at me. He smiled. He pointed right at my face, and he says, call me Rick. I need you. And from there, we sat down for 10 minutes, and I gave him the basic spiel, the You Everywhere Now multicast marketing idea, that instead of traveling like he was doing, because he had surgery, he has back pain, he doesn't like to travel anymore, I said, you can share your message with the entire connected planet and raise money from your home. You can broadcast your message live. You can turn it into a podcast show. And I said, do you have a book? And he says, I've been writing one for 3 years. And I said, you can have one done in 30 days. Here's a copy of my book, Multicast Marketing Machines. And anyway, or Multicast Marketing. And he said, when can we get together next? Well, right there, I ended up scheduling, and 9 days later, he's sitting in my studio recording a podcast, his first podcast, and he was blown away. And now they're using some of our tools. They're using Instant Customer to capture leads and build visibility. And when he's on TV and on the radio now, he tells people to text their email address in to this phone number to get more information. And he's coming back into the studio soon. He wants to do a full-on show. And you know, here I got access to an Academy Award-winning mega superstar who's you know, he changed my life. Yeah, at least his role did, his character did, and the movie he was in. But the point is, asking someone this one simple question, can I interview you on my show, will give you access to people you never dreamed of. And that is a magnificent thing. It's again the playing field for access to practically anyone on the planet is flat, and the playing field for distributing your content and being seen, heard, read, viewed anytime, anywhere, any device is flat. It's democratic. You could be the poorest of the poor in the worst country, and if you got access to the internet, which 80% of the human race does now, you could do a show and connect and change lives. And I think that's the big game that we all can participate and play in, that I'm super excited about. And it is the greatest moment in human history to be alive right now. And I think it's not just a responsibility, it is your right and your responsibility to be incredibly wealthy, to go out there and share that wealth and share this incredible abundance and share who you are and share your heart and your authenticity and those of others with the human race. And there you go. That's all I got.
Absolutely. No, it is a time of abundance. Absolutely. I'm just reading Abundance by Peter Diamandis right now, actually. So that's interesting. And a couple of things that you talked about, getting access to people through will you be a guest on my show? And just to go back to what I was saying earlier, if you start a show where you start getting your message out there, as soon as you start, that's when it starts growing. The bigger it grows, the more of a platform you have. I mean, this is something that publishers look for when they're looking for a book. People are looking for a book deal. The bigger your platform, the more likely somebody is to say yes. Plus, with this kind of stuff, with the internet and the way things are working, it's super highly targeted. So, like, you mentioned John's podcast earlier. You know, he's got those sponsors queuing up for the medical tourism, and I imagine, I don't know the numbers, but I imagine those sponsors for that kind of stuff probably pay pretty well because it's a hyper targeted audience. So, Mike, I want to be respectful of your time. You've shared amazing stuff and some amazing stories with us, but super important question for you now is how can people find out more about you? How can people get onto your list? I mean, I'll put these whatever links you give onto the website, but what's the best way for people to get in touch and follow you?
All right. Well, I think one of the first things is I want to give everyone a great gift, what I think is a great gift anyway, which is just head on over to trafficgeyser.com/YEN to get my book, You Everywhere Now, for free, and read that, because it's all about this. And I go through what I think are some powerful exercises about how to rapidly create content. And I get into more depth and detail about the stats and the opportunities with this. And there's also a free video series that kind of guides you through what this is all about. So we'll call that one. That's trafficgeyser.com/YEN. Now, if you want to, you can visit my website. It's my name, which is MikeKoenigs.com. There's a shortcut link I'm going to give you because most people can't spell my name, which is M mrbz.com, like Mr. Biz without the I. So mrbz.com.
Okay.
And on there, I actually have an interview of me with Peter Diamandis, and I talked to him about being seen, heard, found, and also the notion of abundance. So it's an abundance interview. If you're into Peter Diamandis, which I am just like you, he's become a friend of mine, and he's also a customer of mine as well. But he's another great example of a remarkable guy who's transforming and changing lives. And then, of course, you can head on over on Facebook. It's just facebook.com/Koenigs, my last name, KOENIGS.com, and just PM me. Send me a private message if you have any thoughts, questions, and I'd be happy to share. I've got some other books as well that I'd be happy to give away to your audience as well, just to get them exposed to these ideas of rapid content creation and getting going. And you also learn more about my products too, Traffic Geyser and Instant Customer. But so I know we didn't really answer some of your questions, but hopefully,
this was, to be honest, this was better. This was great. You've shared some amazing stuff with, and I know we've got to wrap up now, but I definitely say check out the links on the website. The tools that Mike talks about are amazing, and they are geared up specifically for experts and entrepreneurs. So definitely check those out. Check out the books. Mike, you've been a huge influence in my life over the last 5 years. So huge, big thank you from me. It's awesome to have you on the show. I appreciate it. I hope I can kind of pay it back to you and introduce some people that maybe aren't familiar with your work to this point and recommend you to them. So amazing stories, amazing content, amazing insights. From me and on behalf of everybody listening, Mike, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the show.
It is my absolute and sincere pleasure, and thank you for having me. And I'm really looking forward to meeting some of your followers and your friends as well. So make sure you reach out and say, I'm a friend of John Tighes when you PM me on Facebook. And obviously all the social media stuff, just follow me, and I'll fill your life and your brain filled with, well, hopefully good stuff. But
definitely good stuff. Yeah.
But thank you very much for the opportunity, John. This is absolutely wonderful.
Awesome. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. Let's talk soon. Thank you.
You got it.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Three times a week, Publish, Position, Profit brings you interviews with amazing experts and entrepreneurs who are crushing it in business. Join us to hear their stories, the obstacles they overcame on their way to success, the lessons they learned on their journey, and what motivates them to succeed now. Discover how they are using today's incredible publishing opportunities to reach their target audience, build relationships, position themselves as leaders in their field, and profit from doing something they love. Don't miss out on another episode. Visit publishpositionprofit.com, where you can join us every week by subscribing through iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud.
Thank you for joining us. Check out publishpositionprofit.com for show notes and links to the great resources mentioned. And remember, now is your time. So prepare to publish, position, and profit. And start living life on your terms.